PowerPlayChess, brought to you in association with Kagi. I'd like to show you a crushing attack played in the Weissenhaus Freestyle tournament. That's Fischer Random Chess. And it features Magnus Carlsen playing white against Nodirbek Abdusattorov. And this was from their quarterfinal match. This is Fischer Random Chess. And of course, that refers to the shuffling of the baseline, because you can see these pieces are not in their traditional places on the baseline. But actually, I think Fischer Random Chess also refers to the kind of positions that arise that are often really random, and that leads to great misjudgments. And that's what we're going to see here. So here we go. Carlsen playing white, Abdusattorov playing black, two of the strongest players in the world. And look what happens. So f4 from Carlsen. Well, that feels like a very natural move, opening up the bishop, threatening bishop takes pawn, so that you could say it already sort of gains a tempo for white, because black has to deal with that threat, and white is also having some influence on the center with this move. I suppose it's possible just to block that with knight b6, the attack. But Abdusattorov reacts in kind and plays f5, so he sets up his own threat here. And Carlsen decides to take the plunge, as does Abdusattorov. So, already that is a very strange position that we've got after just two moves. And Carlsen decides to open the position with e4. And this is such an interesting position already. Abdusattorov decides to take the rook. That's actually a mistake, as we're going to see. He should take on e4. I'll explain why in a second. So Abdusattorov took, Carlsen recaptured, so he's got this one in reserve. He's just waiting. And Abdusattorov took on e4. Right. I'm going to stop the game already. It's time for a think and drink moment. So you have a think. I will have a drink. What did Carlsen play next with white? So white to play. Have a think what you do. Okay, cheers. Well, if he just recaptures this pawn, then actually this one comes out. Let's say the rook goes back e6. This bishop is preparing to come into the game. This is okay for black. I think crucially you can see that queen, like the black queen, is sort of stuck, doesn't get into the game. But that is why Carlsen played g3. Now this simple little move actually turns the game in white's favour. So the whole point is this queen wants to come out from the corner and take on e4, and white has a space advantage and that queen gets in the game. Okay, well, why is this such a big deal? Why can't black play d5, just protecting that pawn? Well, here is where white would play d3. And this is just tremendous for white. It's incredible how, after just a few moves, white can get a huge advantage. Okay, white wants to take here. You can see black's king is not very good on c8. It's rather boxed in by the bishop, which it itself can't move. The rook, which also can't move. This bishop might come out, which could be very annoying for the king. So, for example, if pawn takes, queen takes, I'll keep going. So white is a pawn down, but actually the king is in desperate trouble. I've been very cooperative here, but you can see how this can lead to disaster very quickly, and white already has a winning position because the pawn on e6 will cave in. Look at the difference between the queens here. Black's queen just hasn't got in the game. White's queen looks tremendous. So this is the whole point. g3 opens up the game for the queen. Now, if I just go back a couple of moves, so instead of taking on b1, Abdusattorov should have taken on e4 straight away. And if g3, in this case d5 is okay, because after d3 that can be taken. Notice the bishop is still protecting the pawn, so the queen doesn't come into play. So white would have recaptured here, but that's a very different situation. Crucially, the queen is still stuck in the corner. So that was the mistake, to actually grab that rook so quickly. And then g3, as we're going to see, gives white a very pleasant advantage. So Abdusattorov played c6, which brings this bishop into the game. Carlsen took on e4. Already white has a very clear advantage. This queen has come into the game. You can see Abdusattorov's queen stuck in the corner. G6, okay, he's trying to bring the queen into the game along this diagonal somewhere. But knight e3, it's not so easy to activate the queen. And bishop b6, so Abdusattorov doesn't want to leave this bishop here. He wants to resolve the situation. He wants to force the bishop to take the rook. So it looks like black's king is reasonably placed here. But the problem is, from black's viewpoint, is that this queen can't get over to protect the king. It can't move over to the queen side. Or the king side is very confusing. It can't move it over to protect the king. Whereas this queen is beautifully placed to go on the attack. So let's have a look and see how that works out. Knight b3, yeah, knight needs to come into play. And queen b4. Compare the two pieces. So that gains time against the bishop. If the bishop moves, then this knight could be ready to come into the attack, not to mention this one as well. So an exchange on e3, just trying to maybe, yeah, with exchanging, trying to ease the pressure. But this is already a fantastic position for white. Watch what happens. Knight d5, attacks the queen. Queen a5. And now we can see that black's king is going to be in big trouble. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. Compare the position of the two queens. So Abdusattorov looks to gain counterplay in the middle. Very sensible. Trying to open things up. But this is an excellent move from Carlsen. Bishop f3. So that if pawn takes pawn, then that can be taken. And knight d4, it's so simple. The knight just comes into b5 and black's king is helpless. So for example here, knight b5, this is already winning. After this, you don't even need to recapture. You just play king a2 and you can see that these major pieces are completely helpless against all these threats. Basically, one of these three moves is going to win for white. It's mate follows shortly, as they say. So that's why Abdusattorov needed to close the position with e4. The bishop came back. There's a bit of pressure here. Queen g7, that queen desperate to enter the game and get back to the queen side. Does he have time for d6 and queen c7? If he did, then he would stand a chance of defending. But c4, very powerful move. Pushing the knight away. And king c2. And now the rook swings over to the open a file, combining with the queen. Queen f7, threatening this one, so bishop f1. d6 and rook a1. It's too late for the queen. That would be mate already on a8. And now it's a question of just swinging the pieces over to force a decision. Knight c5, b4. I mean, this looks like a proper game of chess now. The opening phase is very confusing, but the pieces and the pawns have coalesced into something that looks like a very regular game of traditional chess. but one where white is absolutely crushing black. I mean, it looks like a game from a simultaneous display, a Meister gegen Amateur, not two of the strongest players in the world, Carlsen and Abdusattorov. And the game finished like this: knight a6, b5. This is very exact, actually. If queen b6, in fact, queen c7 gives black a little bit of hope. Looks like white is winning a piece, but actually the rook is trapped, curiously. And that one's not so clear. But b5 is really strong. So that's forced, and queen b6. The difference is, if queen c7, then white can take the piece, and the rook is not trapped. King c7, rook takes pawn. And white is just a piece up. So very exact move, b5. Queen b6. So the threat is rook takes knight. I dare say knight c6 is also pretty good. The game finished like this: knight b4 check, and king d2, and Abdusattorov resigned. I mean, it really is absolutely hopeless with the queen threatening queen d6, and well, there's all kinds of nasty things going on here. For example, well, let me show you one possible variation: rook c8, a queen check, knight b5. Okay, so we can do it all with checks, and black's position collapses. Let's check. Got to keep hold of the queen. The rook is hanging. Yeah, game over. What a crushing victory. But it shows that in Fischer random chess, where the players are unfamiliar with these positions, even the best players in the world can make terrible misjudgments, and the game can turn on one move. And that's basically what happened here. Bishop takes rook, mistake, g3, and suddenly white has a very clear advantage because of the position of the queens, but also holding a space advantage in the middle of the board. And that proved decisive very quickly. 23 moves, the game was over. Crushing stuff. There you go. So I think Fischer random chess has its place in the chess world. It'll never supplant traditional chess, but I do find it very interesting indeed.